Hello, everyone, and welcome to 2020X Vision Scaling Through Disruption, Tariffs, AI, Global B2B Growth. I'm Vishwendra, founder of Growth Sutra, and I'll be your host today. So, before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. Say hi in the chat and let us know where you are joining from. We'd like to know where our community is located. If you have got any questions for our speakers, drop them in the comments. We'll bring them live. And if you like the insight shared by the speaker, do like or share your comment. Do like the insights. Do like the video or the insights at the time our speakers will be sharing, and share your comment in the comment section. If you miss any part of our today's session, the replay will be available on our LinkedIn Live event page and also on our YouTube channel. So you can plug into our channels and watch the replay there. I'm actually joined this evening by two exceptional experts. Let me add them here. Hi, Edna. Hi, Param. Welcome to the session.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So Edna is an international communication business consultant who has led brand communication and sustainability programs at Sita, Nissan, UNESCO, and more. Param is a strategy consultant and advisor with deep experience in growth strategy, digital transformation, and corporate governance. I'm sure today's session is going to be very, full of insights. Considering the fact that the topic is so recent, it's there's a lot of buzz which is going around. But before we get started, let me invite our speakers if they want to share an introduction, a brief intro about themselves. While I did cover some bit of the profiles, but Edna, Param, do you have anything to add to your profile?
Param, why don't you go first?
Okay, thanks. No, Vish, thanks for the introduction and good evening, everyone. So as Vish mentioned, I'm basically a strategy consultant and advisor, work with both established firms and startups. Been on the advisory boards of few startups as well. So I sort of bring a varied perspective on things. I'm usually the voice of reason in terms of my engagements with founders and leadership teams. So I look forward to an engaging conversation, look forward to contributing my 2 cents to this conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Param.
Should I go? Yeah, sure. So my name is Edna M. Yachil. I'm based in Paris at the moment. And I am someone who's had a rather long career in corporate communications and marketing, both in the B2B and the B2C in various multinationals. And I'm now working as a consultant, primarily in marketing and in strategic communications. And I'm really looking forward to attacking this topic. It's a very timely topic. It's a very sexy topic, and I think we're going to get a lot of interest. And I just want to encourage our listeners to please ask questions during the conversation.
Thank you, Edna. Thank you so much. So, as you mentioned, since this topic is so timely, and everyone in the market, where we have so much of noise that actually tends to bring more instability in the market, and the story we tell can be sometimes more dangerous than the disruption itself. So just to warm up the session before we move to the 3 segments that we plan to have, if you could share what's more dangerous right now. Is this the disruption itself because of the tariff war, or the disruption that is happening because of the AI adoption, or concerns about AI, or the way leaders talk about it? So can we look at from the perspective that chaos can actually be an advantage to some of the organizations? So Edna, over to you, if you could share some light over.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about ancient history and bring up the pandemic, which, believe it or not, is 5 years ago, right? It's not that ancient history. I think we're living in a time, and people have been saying this since I started my career over 20 years ago, but now we're really living in a time where change is constant. Okay, we had the pandemic, which was clearly unprecedented at a global scale. We have Mr. Putin, doing various activities in the Ukraine. Most recently, we've had some. How should I put this? Conflict in your neck of the woods, Vision Paramp, between India and Pakistan. So, from a geopolitical point of view, from a health point of view, from an economics point of view, we have a rather unpredictable leader in the United States at the moment, who is making some decisions, which I'm sure we will go into more details later. And we have this big change that's come in the past couple of years with AI. So I would say that change has always been a constant in business, and that people need to be able to, leaders need to be able to deal with it. But I think that change is coming faster and more frequently, and therefore it really becomes paramount that leaders can find a way to steer the course correctly, and yet make shifts when necessary, but not too rapidly. Otherwise, we'll just be spinning in circles. So I don't know, Paramp, if you agree with me or you have something to add to that.
No, I think that those are excellent points. And yes, the velocity of change, what we call VUCA world, the velocity of change has become so fast. But the good thing is that with all the technology and technological developments, technology is also enabling businesses to keep pace with that change to a certain extent, right? So they're going hand in hand, so as to speak. There is so much that is happening, and with something like an AI, you can capture all that so much into your decision making. If we were to be in this environment 20 years ago, I think it would be devastating. But perhaps luckily, matter of coincidence or whatever one may call it, we are in this environment along with technological shifts which can enable us to manage this environment if done right. And which to your point on, can chaos be an advantage? I believe it can be. And I've been an investor for 30 years now. I'm wearing my investor's hat for now. And volatility is the best friend of an investor. It allows you to look at businesses who are perhaps fundamentally good, but not doing very well in terms of price equation, and you can go in and pick up those businesses. Similarly, for businesses in a chaotic situation, while it creates challenges for you, it also creates opportunities for you, because the market is changing, the customers are evolving. It provides you a lot of new areas to play with. It provides you opportunities to tap into which other smaller or slower players may not be able to do. And hence, in many ways, chaos can be a source of advantage, perhaps even competitive advantage. I'll leave it at that for now.
No, I agree with you. I'd even go further, Paramp. I think, just as a retail individual investor, you need to rebalance your portfolio occasionally. I think that some of the things that are happening now, especially with regards to the US and to China, are sort of showing that maybe the global world order, the countries around the world need to look at their portfolio, if you will, to take the metaphor further, and think about rebalancing it, and not being so sort of putting all of their chickens into one basket.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed.
In fact, I've noted a couple of points. So one is, of course, the change is constant. And nowadays, this change has accelerated. So there's, of course, the velocity has increased. But at the same time, chaos can be good for for various organizations. Of course, it can disrupt the business ecosystem, but then it can also lay ground for new ecosystem, or the ecosystem that can actually be give more growth opportunities for various organizations. So I think it's kind of critical to also look for what are those signals. How should you align with the changing ecosystem, which can actually benefit your goals, your vision, and your business moving forward. So, Edna, as you talked about, what is happening in the US market, and especially the leadership there, who are influencing or who are actually driving the chaos through tariff war or through other policy, which has been imposed on other countries. When we have such kind of tariff hits, 100%, and trade wars, which is escalating day on day, that also damages a country's ease of doing business, or even the innovative, technologically innovative brand image in the world. So how can B2B businesses communicate resilience and manage this perception fallout with global B2B buyers? So what should a B2B business should do, considering this kind of fallout in the brand image of the country or the leadership?
Okay, so maybe I'm not sure that everyone listening to this knows me, but I am born in New Jersey, but I've been living abroad for the past 24 years. So and interestingly enough, we tried to get some US based participants in this conversation. They were a little bit hesitant, which tells you something. So I'm not speaking for all my country people, but I'm sort of happy to say that it's a hit to the brand of the United States, what's happening right now. And I think Paramp and I will be happy to go into more details later, that there are certainly some areas that the current administration has some ideas that are quite interesting. It's maybe the way that they're going about fixing them that are questionable. But having said that, the United States has played an oversized role politically, economically, etc., since World War II. That's 80 years. And what is so shocking to me, to view it at least from Europe, is how quickly basic things that one held as just givens have been shattered. Primarily when it comes to rule of law, when it comes to norms, etc. And the fallout from that is that regardless of whether you think the tariffs are a good idea or not or whatever, but the fact of the matter is that there were certain expectations about the way that the U.S. was going to act, which you might like or not like, in the past. And, with the Republican administration, there were certain, tendencies, both economically, politically, and, slightly different ones with the Democrats, but it was within a certain framework. And now what you have all of a sudden is you have, sort of just, I don't want to say random, but you have sort of decisions that are being made, announcements that are being made that seem to be quite shocking, and then over time, and when we say over time, guys, we are on the 15th of May, and Mr. Trump has been in office since the 20th of January, so it hasn't been that long. I mean, I feel like it's been 3 years, but it's been it's only been a few months. But what happens is that people are starting to understand that there's a lot of bluster, a lot of sort of a very very shocking things that are said or suggested, and then there might be a pullback, etc. And so I think that we're even in a different point where we were, say a couple of months ago, that people are starting to understand how this administration is working. Having said that, and going back to Vish, to your question, how can the B2B business deal with this? Well, the first thing is to really think about who are you doing business with, how and how much risk and volatility are you willing to make? And going back to what I said before, do you want to put all your fish, into trade with the US, or do you want to sort of spread things out and diversify a little bit? I'm going to let Param respond to that, but I just want to point out that Nancy has a question, so maybe we follow up with that after.
I think Nancy has shared a comment that doesn't this shift help only the big fishes and the small fishes eaten up?
Param, you want to?
Well, I would take a contrary view on this. I think the big fish will have a challenge over here because they are the ones who will move the needle for US in terms of their trade targets and so on and so forth. So the focus over there is perhaps to go after the big fish and try and fix what the US may think are their challenges. And it may provide, and as I said earlier, this disruption may provide opportunity for smaller, nimble businesses to occupy the spaces that may be left vacant by the big businesses. Now, I know it's easier said than done, but if one keeps an eye outside, on the horizon and ears to the ground, I believe there will be enough and more opportunities for businesses to make use of, both in US and outside of the US.
I 100% agree, and I think that agility, especially for your we have a lot of founders on this call. When you have a small company, you can move faster, you can adapt better, you can go to new locations, you can build new products, and I think that it's really a wonderful opportunity to get into certain markets or into certain areas which may have been blocked off by the big boys and girls previously.
Absolutely. In fact, it's been noticed many times, even by the economists, that when there's a time of economic recession or disruption, it's actually the small enterprises that actually gain more, because then they can compete with larger enterprises. They can position there because there's a pressure on pricing, there's a pressure on the expectations from the buyers are more. And that's where small enterprises can position their products, can position their thought process, and they can build a journey that can actually help them grow in a more sustainable manner and in longer term. And that's where we have seen there are a lot of organizations that have actually built. In fact, there are new organizations, new companies that also gain ground. So before COVID, for instance, Zoom, it didn't have that much of buzz around. It was seen more like competing with Teams or with Google Meet. Yeah. But then Zoom business skyrocketed after COVID, because most of the meetings then started happening virtually, and that's where Zoom got a great opportunity. But thank you so much. Thank you, Nancy, for sharing this insight. I'd request all other audience to also share their insights or questions in the comment box so that we can address your comments too, while I'm raising some of the questions from my end. So Param, I'll come to you, especially when we look at these kind of retaliatory tariffs. So while the US levied 145% tariff, then China levied 125%, and then there are restrictions. Moreover, now US has also implemented AI diffusion rules to control the export of AI software and chip technology, particularly to China and other high-risk nations, which is now impacting some of the semiconductor companies. We can talk about NVIDIA. We can, Huawei is on the receiving end. So how do these policies create short-term and long-term structural risk to capital and GTM for B2B companies?
Well, it'll play out in various ways for various businesses. As we shared earlier, the impact on these big businesses is that it allows them to look at two things. One is they start looking at risks which they were earlier ignoring.
Exactly.
Right. So and it is also in some ways good for them, because this would have happened maybe 5 years down the line, maybe 10 years down the line. Economic cycles, and we were discussing the other day, I track multi-centennial economic cycles. These follow cycles of 100 years and plus. If you look at it from that perspective, something like this was bound to happen. Now it's a matter of chance that it's Mr. Trump and it's happening today when we are here, but it would have happened in any case. Nothing lasts forever. So it was coming. The question is businesses may have ignored it as a risk which they thought would not occur in their lifetimes, and now suddenly they are faced with those risks. And Huawei has been a example where in the past also there have been challenges, and they've had to reorient their businesses and break ways in manner of speaking from participating in US hardware industry. They've found their way. Same thing will happen with something like an Nvidia, where if suppose there are export barriers in terms of their certain category of chips, there will be some lower category of chips which will be allowed to be exported. And over a period of time, while the disruption will be felt immediately because it creates a supply chain issue and almost a supply shock, so as to speak, the demand stays. With all countries now started focusing on looking at what are critical elements for them, and do they need to become more resilient in terms of producing those critical elements within the country. So in the case of India, we're now looking at setting up semiconductor plants and chips in the country, which 2 years ago nobody would have thought about because they were easily available and supply chains were well established, and all of that was helping everyone. But what has happened now is the global value chains and the global supply chains, which were earlier focused on efficiency, are now getting focused on reliability and resilience.
Exactly.
So it is okay, and these will be for certain items. It is okay for some nations and some businesses to have a higher cost for producing certain products which they consider are critical for them, than saying I'll buy it or source it from the most efficient and the most cost-effective, originating point. I think that's the larger shift that we will see over the next 5, 10, 15 years, perhaps.
I agree with you. If I can just add one thing that we haven't discussed yet, and this is more specifically targeted at the US, I think one of the huge areas to look at is this de minimis tariff loophole, because if you look at it, if you sort of zoom out and you start looking at it just from a the green, eco-friendly, it's not a smart thing to be shipping millions of packages from China to the US individually every day to avoid a tariff. So there may be a also just sort of a societal benefit from some of these changes that happen. Now, of course, for your, I guess, Temu and some of these other companies that have made their mark in this channel, it's a big hit. But overall, is it such a bad thing that millions of little cheap whatever are being T-shirts are being sent to the US individually? It's probably not.
Absolutely. In fact, that's the fractured supply chains and the products which have been shipped in such scenarios could be a great concern moving forward. And that's the reason I think US somewhere also felt that need to kind of to stop some of the products which have been shipped from different countries. In fact, I was also reading the news, and I found that there's a lot of opportunities which are coming from a nearshoring perspective. So earlier, when products were coming, say, from Asian countries. Now, for US market, these products might come from Mexico, or there's also growing market from Vietnam, which could also impact the global supply chain that was a normal ecosystem earlier. But yeah, thanks for sharing these insights. In fact, Param, you also mentioned about resilience and the shifts that are taking place in terms of the market opportunities. So when you have such unpredictable, tariffs, there might be currency fluctuations. Then demand shift may also impact the financial forecasting, budgeting, and revenue projections. In a way that building a forecast could be extremely challenging for companies. So how's the scenario should be taken into consideration for a resilient business?
Right, and yeah, that's always a tough one. How do you forecast for these things? And maybe I'll give you a short answer first and try and explain it later. You can't forecast for some of these things, right? Some of these things will just happen. The only thing which you can build in your forecast is an element of variance. You'll not be able to put a finger to it that something like this will happen in an X year. But one thing that we know for sure, and I'm going back again 40 years now, we see a global crisis occurring every decade. Right? There was a global financial crisis before that. There was a dot-com bust. Then we had a COVID, and now we have this. So if you look at last 40, 50 years, you will see uncanny recurrence of a global crisis of some sort or the other. There was a SARS earlier, happening every 10 years. Now, smart businesses build something like this into their forecasts. Typically, how forecasts happen is you do a historical regression and you just plot a line and you get numbers. That's the simpler way of forecasting things. You just extend what has been the past trend and then you project it forward. But what real forecasts do is they get into the underlying assumptions of the past forecast. What are the drivers for your forecast? What are the assumptions for your forecast? What are the drivers for your assumptions for your forecast? Are you testing the underlying assumptions? Are they robust enough? And once such a type of forecast is prepared, it tends to have more realistic chance of surviving in a real world than a quick fix job which just extrapolates the past. The other thing is that what is happening now has never happened, or at least has not happened in the past 100 years or so. All your forecasts are redundant. All your historical data is redundant. Even going back 30, 40, 50 years, your data is now redundant. If we were to enter into something like a stagflation in the US, the last time a stagflation happened in the world and in the US was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
How many of the models today look back 50 years? Yeah. So all the numbers, all the models, all the forecasts will have to go back 50 years to figure out what happened, let's say during the last stagflation, how long did it last, what was the monetary fiscal policy, what happened, XYZ, and so on and so forth. So it is easy if you are getting into the details of it. You will be able to figure out. Idea is to figure out what are the early warning signals. Are you able to catch some of those early warning signals? And some companies are able to do that. Some leaders are able to do that. And how do you then build those into your whatever business projections you're making? Obviously, these will be for slightly longer term. It won't be for an annual operating plan sort of a thing. But you can always build these into some of the longer term forecasts.
You mentioned, earlier the crisis used to happen once in 10 years. And if we see this decade, we are seeing two crises already. Means one was COVID. Now we are seeing a tariff war. Then there's also
Vish,
disruption due to AI.
yeah, I would say that there's more than than just that. I think it's sort of it's never.
We have,
It's never,
we are now in a what I call a polycrisis situation,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It is multiple crises, different natures. There are conflicts. There are fought conflicts. There are trade wars. Again, economic conflicts. But these things are when you have two sort of superpowers emerging. It is naive to expect that everything will be normal, right? When a challenger rises, the incumbent will try to protect their turf, right? It happens in business all the time. So why would we think it would be any different when we're talking geopolitics?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let me now move to the topic of Gen AI. So
yes.
Gen AI is a we talked about tariff a lot, but let's also talk about Gen AI. And Gen AI is a double-edged. It's kind of there are productivity gains when you are using Gen AI, but at the same time there are trust gaps. In fact, there was a news yesterday from the New York Times, which is reporting that the latest OpenAI systems are hallucinating at a higher rate than the company's
Exactly.
previous
Yeah.
system. So buyers are cautious, but the hype is not going down. And Edna, should CXOs be mindful of over communicating about AI in this environment? Are there ways to identify gaps and adopt a communication strategy that can help build confidence among their clients?
So this is such a large question. So I think there are several. Maybe if I can sort of just put this on a spectrum, and then we can attack different areas of this question. I think the first question is which you're alluding to, Vish, is AI really a game changer in the way that the Industrial Revolution was, or is it hype and it's not going to have that much of an impact? I think that's one area, and then whether it works or not and it's hallucinating or not is another question. I think that then in addition to that, there are societal questions that we need to ask, which is are we going to have job displacement due to AI? Yeah, probably. Are we going to have what I call brain displacement? And I see this from my kids' friends who don't study anymore and dump everything into AI and sort of offshore they're studying for the offsource the study for the matriculation exams to AI, and then they don't do very well, shockingly. So the question is, to me, is first of all, what is the true potential of it? Who is going to win the war to leverage it? But then also on the societal side, is it making us stupider, or is it going to be, a new kind of calculator on steroids, which helps us be even more productive? So maybe I let Param start, and we can do this one at a time. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that cultural shift, the cultural impact is still being studied by various researchers. But there's no study at the moment which confirms, okay, the adoption of AI may actually impact the society in a negative manner. But as we have seen earlier with other technologies, so the adoption of any technology at an extreme level, even if, for instance, the way we are using mobiles today, it's way crazier. People walking with their neck down and or speaking, watching a video on a mobile phone, or walking, talking to someone else. It was not there 20 years back. So of course, there's a change which is happening in the society. The tech adoption is growing, and how AI is going to impact this societal behavior is something that needs to be. But let me also have Param to add his inputs here.
Sure. No, I think, and let me give you food for thought here. if we have blown up by AI today, imagine what happens when quantum computing comes in. And imagine what will happen when you combine the power of quantum computing with AI. I'll park that for the time being. AI for now is evolving to be a general purpose technology. We will use AI. Obviously, the scene has exploded ever since ChatGPT came in a couple of years ago, but AI has been there for a very long period of time. It's been below the sheets, below the covers, so as to speak, or below the hood, but it's been there. It's just that it's blown up and it's come all of a sudden, and we're all faced with this new shiny sort of a technology, which is at least in the initial period is making us feel super productive about various things that we do. Personally, I think the jury is still out in terms of actually to what extent AI will be helpful. And we were discussing again the other day. I've been using multiple platforms for multiple years now. I can tell you, sometimes even some of the most basic work, the models are not able to do. Right. Then there are some things which some models do better than others. A Grok will be useful for something, a Perplexity will be useful for something else, a Claude will be useful for something else, a ChatGPT will be useful. So I think over a period of time, these models will become specialized in terms of what they do well versus others. They will be, right now, everything is being used across the board at a generic level. So if I suppose use ChatGPT, I will use ChatGPT for everything, right? From coding to research to creative writing and XYZ. But over a period of time, we'll realize that perhaps one model is better at creative, the other model is better at doing robust research, and maybe a third model is better at doing coding, for instance. And that's how the systems will evolve. But make no mistake, these are commoditized even as we speak today. There's not much differentiation, or a DeepSeek can come and disrupt the entire industry tomorrow. So it's become very, very commoditized compared to what it was a few years ago, and that's perhaps the charm of technology and all the technology prowess that is there. And different businesses will learn to use AI to their advantages.
Yes, so in fact, there's a question from Nancy. With AI and data manipulation, will there be a healthy competition?
Well, competition will be, the moment you say these are commoditized, it's like everybody has MS Office. You have
it's how you use it, right, Param?
It's how you.
The people who are successful are the ones who are able to leverage the commodity to do something great, right? But that comes back to Param and Vish and and everyone else's brain. It's not letting the bots take over.
So just 2 points on that. On the question of jobs, I think the question or the conversation should be around skills and not jobs, or tasks and not jobs. Jobs will mostly remain the same. The tasks within those jobs will change. So that's one parting thought that I wanted to leave. The other point that I wanted to leave your audiences with, at the end of the day, as long as we use these tools as tools which support our decision making, these are great tools. The moment we outsource our thinking to them, we are on a downhill path. As long as we can create that distinction, I think these will be great tools to use.
And I want to build on something you said today, just now, Param, which is to go into the classroom. There were several articles in the New York Times in the past 2 days. One was on AI in the classroom from kindergarten until 12th grade, and the education secretary in the U.S. sort of wants to push it down into all schools. And the question is, is that a good thing or not? And the second one was a woman who I believe was in Northeastern University, sued the school because her professor used AI for the course, and she says, I'm paying $8,000 a course, and I want my tuition back. So I think on the one hand, when you look at as you say, research, when you look at assembling the knowledge of information, is this the Google, at a new level? But I think we need to be very, very careful with our youth. And I know that's not the topic of this discussion today, but it's something that we all need to be worried about, to ensure that they're still able to learn in a way that makes them, people who live, work, and contribute to society when they're adults. And we just have to be very, very careful not to dumb down society completely. And that would just be my caveat. But I think we should probably move back to talking about corporations.
You did talk about what are the areas that we can cut or keep, but let's move to this discussion where the next segment, which is actually about scaling through the chaos, what to cut, keep, or double down on. But it's from the business perspective, so we can quickly discuss about how to allocate resources under pressure. Some sectors are seeing revenue declines of 30%. Even while AI budgets soar, there's a growing investment in the AI ecosystem. There are many startups which are coming up. I've seen numbers like 354 million have already been invested in AI startups. But leaders must decide where to invest and what to let go. So my question to you, Edna, is what does a smart resource allocation look like for marketing teams? From an international marketing perspective in these disruptive times, is it about doubling down on brand equity or leaning into more performance-focused moves?
The answer is it depends. Look, your overall brand, when you're looking really at a brand, the brand is the trust that the company has in from its stakeholders. And that's something that takes years to build. Look at a Coke, look at a McDonald's. It takes years to build. It can be shut down pretty quickly. I think the US in the moment is a good case study in how reputation can be hurt. Is it permanent or not? I don't know. Look, when it comes to marketing, everything is obviously in the exact situation for the individual company. In certain cases, you really need to work more on brand awareness and on goodwill from your stakeholders. And in other points, you really need to be going deep into a certain area with very data-driven tactics in order to get a certain result that you want. So I'm probably hedging, saying here that both are important, but the sort of deciding in which direction you go is really specific to the company you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, every company would have their own way of looking at the areas where they can double down, or they can kind of revisit their strategy to understand what is working for them or not. But thanks, Edna. Param, I would you actually talked about sometimes these disruptions can create a valley of death for startups and emerging B2B businesses, because funding opportunities may constrict and investor confidence wanes. So what's one GTM adaptation or financial resilience measure, perhaps counterintuitive, that helps them navigate this, especially if their buyers are also hit by broader economic shocks? So what strategies would you recommend, especially for emerging enterprises, so that they can avoid value of death?
So yeah, the value of death exists, will continue to exist. It's just that these times make it either more deeper or more wider. The thing is, and it depends on what stage the business is and what are they doing, what are they focusing on, XYZ. So all of those things are there. For instance, I sit on the advisory board of a AI startup, and we are looking at creating a market entry strategy which allows you to distinguish your product offering from what others are offering. So the first thing is, are you a niche service provider or a niche product in the market? And I'm just digressing from the value of death part for a second, and I'll come back to that. So what we need to look at is, during times of distress, performance marketing becomes critical, because if you don't look at an ROI for every dollar spent, you will soon run out of money.
Yeah.
Right. So tightening your belts become very, very important. The branding and equity part has to stay, because that gets built over a period of time. So you have to take a judicious call, like Edna mentioned. There has to be a judicious balance between the two.
Yeah.
But you have to make those tactical adjustments.
Yes.
Sometime, wherein you say, okay, I'll perhaps go slow on the branding part of things, so I'll curtail some of those activities, because there the ROI comes up over a period of time. And I'll focus more on, let's say, running more efficient marketing campaigns or sales campaigns, because there your ROI is immediate, and especially for businesses in a startup phase, where revenue is critical. There, every dollar matters. Coming back to the value of death question, there what becomes important is, assuming all else is there, if you need funding, what is your runway? What are your sources of funding? What is your cost of funding going to be? Do you have a plan A, B, and C for that? If you don't have any of this, your chances of tipping over into that value of death become higher. What will happen in the current environment, assuming things don't improve, and I hope they do, you are seeing first order impact in terms of economic slowdown and so on and so forth. You will see second order, third order impacts coming into play, which will mean that for businesses wanting to raise funds from, let's say, US investors may find it difficult, because the US investors themselves will be in a bit of a pickle. So what do you do in terms of your fundraising then? What are your alternative sources of fundraising? Apart from equity, have you looked at other types of fundraising, which is, let's say, debt financing and so on and so forth? Those options are also available. Are you looking at convertibles and other things? Do you need to start looking at things like Europe, for instance, to say, okay, is there some upcoming investors over there?
But Aramp, if I may, you also then need to look at the different expectations from the investors.
Absolutely.
In a place like Europe, and
Agreed. And I was trying to make that point as well, that investing is one thing. How do you provide an exit to the investor then?
Yeah, exactly.
If your economic cycles are going down, which means your equity markets will most likely go down, what is happening on the fiscal and monetary policy impacts a lot in terms of return expectation and hurdle rates that get set up. So all of that is all interlinked with each other.
Yeah.
And founders and CEOs who are in the market for raising funds, obviously subject to various conditions, they should try and close their fundraising as early as possible.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Quickly here, when we're talking about financial resources or cutting down on, say, probably brand equity. In fact, sometimes the brands, the conversation that we had. So the communication can become more like a more targeted, not a spray and pray kind of a approach. But at the same time, we have to also look at the resources, the cash flows, the financial resources that we are getting. But in this scenario, would you advise the startups or emerging enterprises in terms of doubling down on, say, probably talent or innovation? Param, you talked about new market, but what about talent and innovation? Can we, are these areas can be also looked at from the perspective that we should increase more talent, or we should enhance our we should upskill our team so that we can offer better solutions to the market.
Right. No, yeah, I think when we talked about resilience a bit earlier on, and I'll just quickly talk about in terms of there are 4 levels of resilience, or 4 types of resilience. You have financial resilience, you have organizational resilience, you have operational resilience, and you have an external resilience. For a business to be resilient, unless you have a culture of resilience, it won't work, right? And a part of having that resilience is, and again, it depends on what stage the business is and what market they operate and what products they offer. But innovation will become inherent to building resilience.
Yes.
Right. Disruptive innovation is how businesses have survived. At least if you look at businesses which survive for 100+ years, they continuously innovate. There's no other way of doing it. And it perhaps become all the more important, apart from the fact that you need to focus on the right thing. You also need to focus on when there's so much of disruption happening, whether are you innovating for the right people at the right place at the right time, so that your product remains relevant for the changing consumer or changing industry or changing business dynamics. Innovation becomes a very key part of it. And talent upgradation or upskilling has to go hand in hand with that, because what is relevant today will not be relevant 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line. Like we discussed on AI and technology and other things. It is, I think today we are in some shape and form, every business is a tech business and every business is a knowledge business.
Can I add something to what you're saying? I was recently, and I don't want to give too many details, but I was recently working with a client which was extremely large, with a lot of innovation and funds on the IT and the tech side. And at the same time, the finance department was still basically on Excel. And we were trying to bring agility to the overall enterprise. And it was really surprising to me to see in a company that you could have so much innovation, and so in the PMO and on the tech side, but when it came time to the funding, the internal funding of the and again, this was a very, very large organization. So I think it's not just talent about picking up young engineers who are hungry to do the work. It's really thinking about how are you structuring your company, and how are the different roles playing out within your organization, and is HR, is finance really there to support that resilience and that agility, or are they locked in 1980s when the CTO and his team are in 2050, right? So I don't know.
No, absolutely. This alignment has to be there across all the different functions. But let's now quickly move to the last segment, which is more on the building, the communication part, the strategic messaging, which can be the trust multiplier in volatile in markets like where volatility is very high. So, Edna, what are the core principles of CXO communication that can help build a trust-first narrative? Especially when we're looking at
I always say the same thing. I said this in our last LinkedIn Live. It's authenticity. It's authenticity. It's being honest. It's being true to your customer and consistent, and being there, being humble when an error is made, apologizing when a serious error is made, and being transparent. And that's really the secret ingredient, and that's not going to change.
Absolutely. So when we have seen a couple of instances of in terms of crisis from a crisis perspective, and there are times when buyers actually expect more authentic communication from the leaders, but many times it so happens that the actual tone or what needs to be messaged, what needs to be packaged in a message that can position a brand or a CEO communication in a more positive manner is most of the time missing. And there's also an aspect wherein they have to do root cause analysis and to figure out what exactly needs to be communicated to the buyer in this volatile market. But yes, Edna, as you mentioned, it's certainly in terms of how you are bringing authenticity. At the same time, what proof points that you might be using to convince the buyer, what the new way of working, or the areas where you have to work together with a buyer in terms of either building up or cutting down on some of the aspects.
This idea at Amazon, which was then shut down, of actually saying how much the tariffs were costing the customer, I thought was brilliant. Now, obviously, politics got in the way there, but that type of authenticity, at least from whatever your dealing is with the government is a different issue, but with the customer, that's a great way to move forward, is just to be brutally honest and try to find a way together.
Exactly. So Param, because you have also focused on strategic research, you think that there's a way macroeconomic research or research that can actually help a CXO craft his messaging or communication that can actually become more authentic? So what role macroeconomic research or research in itself can help in such communication?
So yeah, I mean, and I'll consider communication as a larger business objective, so as to speak. As I said earlier, from my lens, all businesses are tech businesses and knowledge businesses. That knowledge is achieved through continuous research of your ecosystem, and I have a framework where I look at 5 layers within that ecosystem, starting from the organization itself and going right up to the government and the larger ecosystem at play. And you got to be on top of things for all those 5 layers, especially during times of disruption and challenges that we have. In terms of communicating, and we were talking about brand a little while ago, a dishonest communication is the biggest challenge for your brand.
100%. 100%.
Right? You can be honest in your communication hundreds of times, and if you be dishonest once, your entire effort is lost. So and it's very tough. It's very tough when you are dealing with various stakeholders. And imagine a CEO or a founder who is doing multiple things. Sometimes unknowingly they may miscommunicate. It's not that they intend to do that, but that one misstep washes away all your effort. So the communication, the honesty, the transparency, the authenticity with your investors, with your customers, with your employees has to be right up there if you want to really build a brand which will last you beyond your stay in the company.
Exactly.
And that is a tough ask, to be honest. But yes, a lot of research data, both from for multiple angles, not just for communication, but for multiple things. I think it's all fundamental nowadays.
You know, if I can look at my new because it's only been about a week, favorite leader, and I say this, I'm not Catholic, I'm not even Christian, but the new Pope for me is really embodying authentic servant leadership, someone who is there for the people, for his stakeholders, and that's the type of authenticity that you want to replicate in a company as well.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So last question, is there some kind of a safe bet strategy that can be also adopted by businesses?
Don't go to sleep. Don't fall asleep at the wheel.
Right, yeah.
I don't know, Param, what do you think?
So you said safe strategy?
There's no safe bet.
Safe bet. Any safe bet, either in terms of
trying to be
market.
safe. No, trying to be safe, Vish, means that you're going to fall over.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to be safe, why are you in business? Business is all about taking risks.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, the startup ecosystem is all about. There's so much of energy when I interact with founders and teams. And I mean, they're bustling with energy, wanting to change the world. They should take risks, but those risks have to be calculated. There has to be a certain structure behind it. You know, as Warren Buffett would put it, it's not about being the smartest guy in the room. It's about not making foolish decisions. You got to take care of those, which the startup community perhaps doesn't talk much and give credit much to. Is about governance in the startup business.
Yeah.
People view it as an administrative overhead. But it is not. If you get the right people, the right wisdom on the table, it can be a source of competitive advantage in so many ways that businesses can't even realize. So the safe bet, if I were to say, is have good governance in your business.
Yeah.
That's perhaps one of the safest things that you could do for your business. Rest is obviously there are so many things from a marketing and GTM perspective. There's so much that you can do.
And have good talent as well.
Sorry?
Have good talent.
That is fundamental. I think there are, and I believe that we live in a world where competitive advantages are now transient. There used to be a time when you build a competitive advantage and you could fly with it for 10, 20, 30 years. Nowadays, it's just 2, 3 years, 4 years, and it's poof.
Yeah.
The real source of competitive advantage, according to my understanding, is 2 things: your team and your culture.
Yeah.
That will see you through the toughest times, and that will see you through the most exciting times in the life of a business. As long as you can take care of that, I think it's a great journey. I would encourage everybody to go out and take risks and build what you always wanted to build.
No, thank you so much. I think we had a great conversation today, and in fact, there are a lot of topics that we can still cover. I mean, we can continue this conversation.
Yeah. But each of the questions is a different session. Vish, they're so in depth.
Absolutely. So since it's the end of the hour and we have to be mindful of the audience who have joined us. Thank you so much for joining this session. I hope
thank you, everyone.
You got a lot of great insights from the conversation that we had today. We are doing our next session on 19th of June. This is on the GTM Power Vacuum, AI at the wheel, C-suite, of course. So that's scheduled on 19 June. We are going to share the link of this session with you so that you can register. But thank you so much for joining this session, and look forward to seeing you again on 19th of June. Thank you, Param, and thank you, Edna, for taking our time and sharing such a great, rich insights with examples, real-world examples with the team, with the audiences today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.